This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to episode 33, and happy Mother's Day week to you.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day.
Ryan, I originally thought that the show would be called A Mother's Legacy, but I'm contemplating, we'll see where the show goes today. We're just going to have a discussion, but contemplating changing it to Not As Planned.
Why is that, Michelle?
Well, it's a fitting title for life, right?
Yeah.
And I think motherhood, not as planned.
Yeah. Have anything to do with the week that we've had?
Maybe inspired a little bit by the week too.
Right.
You guys, it's been a week.
Yeah.
It's been the last 24 hours.
Yeah, it has. We've if you're in the Sioux Falls area, you know we've been blessed with a lot of rain.
Mm-hmm.
With rain comes some issues if you have a basement. And we've been dealing with that. Realized our carpet was wet, so that was fun. And
yeah, we're trying to get our house cleaned up because we have graduation this weekend. Yep. Yeah. And so we had our house cleaned by some professionals, and they were like, your downstairs bedroom is wet. So we went. Yeah. And it's kind of like pulling a little bit of a thread where you're like kind of nervous to see where it goes. Like, I don't know if I really want to follow this path.
Right. Yeah.
So you pulled up the carpet.
Yeah, I pulled up the carpet. Obviously, the carpet was wet. That's what triggered this. The padding was soaking wet underneath.
Emptied the entire guest room where all of our, not all of our relatives, they were all going to stay there, but some of our relatives were going to stay there. Yeah. So took apart all the furniture, carried it out.
Yeah, emptied it all out and ripped up all the carpet and stuff. And I realized there was a lot of water there. And
yep. Padding got ripped out. That got taken away by the sanitation crew this morning.
Yeah, dug a little bit deeper, and the baseboards were wet, and so I took those off, and
drywall was wet and
mushy, and we got a little bit of mold growing as well.
Moldy oldies, some mold growing on the walls. Yeah. So tomorrow we get to find out how far that mold goes. So you guys,
that'll be fun.
Ryan, I can't help but feel, so I really think that maybe a fitting title, like I said, is Not As Planned. And we really want this show to be encouraging for you mothers out there or mother figures. We'll talk more about that. And it's going to be a really special show. We hope that you walk away encouraged and your hearts are full. And we have a lot of fun stories to share too from people that shared posts online that wanted to contribute to this. So we kind of have a two-part show, but Ryan, I think too, and maybe other people are feeling this, just, I don't know, last weekend was a big weekend. Big honor for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I don't know, this just feels like an attack in some ways. But as we were getting ready for this show, it was like, I don't even know. We've rescheduled the show twice because things keep coming up. And it's like, I don't know, whatever message of hope that needs to go out today, I feel like it's just been I don't know, I think maybe the enemy just didn't want it to happen, but we're here and the show is not being stopped, and we're going to deliver this message to you. So please keep listening, and we hope that it's an encouragement. And speaking of that, I want to say this at the beginning this time. If you could do something for us, we would just really ask you this favor. Would you like and subscribe, and if possible, leave a review for the Celebrate MarriageCast? So helpful for the algorithms, and we're really taking off and picking up steam. And your vote, your subscription means so much, and that helps other people to be able to find this.
Absolutely.
So Not As Planned, Ryan. The show, life, and mothering, and I think that as mothers, we have a lot of idealistic plans. And I think that social media has probably added to this.
Yeah.
But even things like our ideal birth story, our ideal birthday parties for our kids. Even before that, the ideal proposal, what it should look like, rewinding back, even our daughter's in high school, the ideal prom, and I know prom proposals and all those things, but we have these things in our head of what it should look like. And as mothers, I feel like we hold ourselves to this really impossible standard, but life in mothering is not as planned. If you look at our own story, Ryan, even conceiving, even getting pregnant did not go as planned. So maybe for our listeners, maybe this is you in this state of longing and wanting to be a mom, but it's not happening. But that is in God's timing, right? I wanted to share today. We'll share maybe a little later on. I want to share about Esther and how that helped us through that season. Our son was born 5 weeks early, not as planned.
Right.
What a time that was.
Yeah.
What a tough time. But then even in the everyday mothering moments, Ryan, I think about Thomas's preschool concert. Like when you're like a newer mom, like, or of like little kids, you're like, oh, it's gonna be so perfect. And you got this like cute little outfit and these little khaki joggers and sweater and the cutest little Oshkosh shoes and all this stuff. And he's up there. And do you remember Thomas's first preschool concert, right?
Yeah, I remember that he had 2.
Okay, yeah. So why don't we tell our listeners about these not as planned moments?
Yeah, I think you have this picture in your head of he's going to be up there singing and like just having to do it all the actions and everything. And I don't know which one was which. Maybe if you can help me, but I know one of them he was like becoming a turtle and like trying to get his like shirt like over his head.
Yeah, I think that was his preschool one.
Yeah. And then there was one at the church that he was trying to like rip off his shirt like Hulk Hogan style, like just, but it had buttons, but he was trying to like just rip his shirt.
Yeah. And his belly was showing too. He was super nervous and he was like, I don't know if he was like pulling it to like hide, but he was like, like ripping it.
Right. Yeah. He was ready to rip that thing off. I don't know.
Or like, I think another one too is like beautiful clothes. That was a term coined. About a year ago, we tried to get our son to wear khakis and he is now dubbed those as beautiful clothes. And we've had many a meltdown over, I will not wear those beautiful clothes.
No, he does not like beautiful clothes.
Beautiful clothes.
No.
So, I mean, sometimes it's, you know what, this is how it's going to be. And other times it's, you know what, we're going to show up to wherever we're going and he's wearing joggers and sports clothes to whatever fancy event. And, sometimes it's just picking the battle. Other times it's like laying down the law. But I feel like maybe it's because we have a kid that is older. She's not even a kid anymore. She's 18. That is like, I feel like we've been able to look at those not as planned moments with a little more of a grain of salt and be like, meh, does it really matter if he wears joggers wherever to this, banquet? Okay, maybe. Maybe,
right.
But in 10 years, will anyone really care? I don't know. Maybe we're not picking the right battles, but I kind of think it's pick your battles, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And we only have so much time and energy.
Yeah.
As we talked about the other week, time and energy with Tony Boer.
Right.
So, Ryan, at the end of the day, sometimes it's those things that God shows up and in the moment, I think even, let's talk about Thomas's preschool concert. In the moment, that felt very not as planned, very stressful, but also to look back, and that story brings my mother heart so much joy and so much just cheer. And it's like, and you look back to like his NICU story, and that was such an incredibly tough, not as planned time. But when I think about that moment, can I share about your singing?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember what song you were singing when Thomas was discharged from the hospital?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. I was singing How Great is Our God.
Yeah.
Chris Tomlin. But not just like the regular one, but like the world one. Mm-hmm. If you've ever listened to it, it's got, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different languages that are kind of
so beautiful
throughout. It's absolutely beautiful song. For some reason, I've really gravitated toward the Portuguese one.
Yeah.
I don't speak Portuguese, but
you tried.
It makes it more fun to sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan had texted me and had said, And this is like going on 3 weeks. And we realize that's not a long time in the NICU. Many parents have spent months and so much longer, but we weren't expecting it. It was very sudden, very unexpected that he even was going to the NICU. So there was a lot of like grieving that. It was not the birth plan that we imagined. The birth went well. It went very much as we could have hoped, but what came after just was not what we had planned at all. Not as planned. And so Ryan had started going back to work half days, and he had texted me and said, singing How Great Is Our God, World Edition in my office. And I just had this sweet, sweet moment of picturing my dear husband giving praise to God in his office. And I could just imagine him, because I've seen it 100 times, you singing that, belting it out at the top of your lungs. I don't know if you were singing out loud.
I wasn't singing that loud at work, but yeah.
It was in that moment that the doctors came in, and they said, Michelle, or, whatever they call, I don't know if they said mom, whatever they said, your baby can go home today. We're discharging him. Like, you can go home. In that moment where Ryan got to a point of, okay, this is not as planned at all, but we are surrendering this to you, God, and we are laying it at your feet. And really, we're so helpless in this situation. You're the only one that can do anything about it. And we're just trusting you. We're trusting you in this process. And it was then, after so many false starts, we almost went home, I think, 3 different times, and things kept happening, this and that, and this and that. And finally, it was in that moment of that praise. And as I look back on that not as planned moment, my heart, I feel like God really did something in both of us through that moment of having to cling to him.
Yeah.
And it's not what we set out, it's not what we pictured, but that is such even the emotion that I get, just it brings me right back there. If I hear that song, it's just instant tears, because God did such a work in our life that otherwise would not have happened. If it would have just gone totally as we wanted, as planned, we would not have had that moment of surrender to God, of laying it down at his feet, and of really letting him work in us and letting people show up for us and all of that.
Right.
So not as planned. So I encourage you, if you feel like, gosh, we have a toddler that's really, really tough right now. We thought he'd be potty trained, 2 years ago, or sleeping through the night 2 years ago. We can't relate to any of this, can we, Ryan?
Right. Yeah.
This is so hard. I'm in the thick of parenting. This isn't what I thought it would be like. We just want to encourage you to look for God's presence in that, and know that sometimes in those not as planned moments, that's when you're really going to see God's grace, God's strength. Lean on that, and God's work in your life. And he's going to grow you through it if you keep turning to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much there. I love this not as planned. I mean, holy cow. I mean, I just look at our son Thomas. I mean, 5 weeks early, the nursery wasn't done. We didn't have a car seat. It
was purple. It was still purple.
We didn't have a name picked out.
No.
I mean, all of these things, and it was just like, well, okay. This isn't what we had planned, but just Michelle, as you said, just that act of surrender of just absolutely. And parenting is hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And then you have all these standards that are out there of you should be walking by this time. They should be doing this, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. There's so many things. And
I'm glad you brought that walking one up. I had thought about that as we kind of were coming up with ideas for the show, and I'd totally forgotten. But that is an excellent one, Ryan, because you know what? Now that Thomas is 9, guess what? Nobody is comparing and asking, when did your son start walking?
Right.
No one cares.
Right.
No one remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he started walking months after other parents.
Yeah.
After other parents had shared that their kids were walking,
Yeah. There was one other story just that I don't know, it was just popping in my head as we had brought Thomas to his doctor for just normal check or something like that. And the doctor was awesome, and he's like, my daughter was late potty training and she's in grad school now. So he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So like, I don't know. That's always stuck with me too, of just like, okay, just take a breath. Like, it might not be going as you plan, but it's going to be okay.
Yeah. In 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years, it is going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's a great example.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just, and as we're talking, I'm thinking about, I mean, like, you think about Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming into the world. Like, it wasn't Mary's plan, as a mom, she wasn't, thinking like all along, like, hey, this is going to be great,
Yeah.
Even
getting pregnant, being, like having her pregnant, like telling her family she's pregnant.
Right.
Probably not as planned ever.
Right. Or telling her husband, or soon to be husband, I mean, so much of that story isn't
as planned.
And so I think we can look at that and look at, okay, but there was a bigger plan that was in place.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bigger plan that was coming that was so much better than anything that we could have planned.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, Ryan. Think about another woman of the Bible, not necessarily a mother, but Esther. I promised you I'd come back to this earlier, but and I debated whether or not, because she's just not a mother, but she's a really strong woman of the Bible. And I think, for some of our listeners, they maybe are in this season of, maybe they're not yet a mom, maybe they're just dating or, divorced, or maybe you are dealing with struggling to get pregnant. And so I came back to Esther and I thought, you know what, it's Mother's Day episode and I do want to share this, but the line that I come back to so often is, for such a time as this. And I believe that Esther's uncle Mordecai was the one that really gave her this pep talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was Mordecai. Yeah. And he said, Esther, for such a time as this, you are here as queen to save your people, to have that conversation with King Xerxes for such a time as this. And I actually happened to be doing a Esther Bible study, the one by Beth Moore, when we were really hoping and longing to get pregnant. And I remember it just felt like such a long path. And in the scheme of things, wasn't, I mean, lots of people have longer ones, but it felt long, in the thick of it. And I remember being so encouraged by the study. And I had it was almost like the Chris Tomlin, how great is our God moment that you had. But I did this study and I had this moment of, you know what, Michelle, like, you can't control this. It is all in God's hands. And maybe your future baby is, or whatever the plan is supposed to be, maybe it's for such a time as that, to come. And maybe their future spouses, parents, haven't even met yet. Like, if it's all in God's timing, maybe it's just not time yet. Or maybe it's, for a lot of people, fostering or being strong mentor mother figures in other capacities. But for such a time as this. So I want to encourage you with that too. The story of Esther really helped us in our journey. And I think it just kind of reiterates that idea of surrendering to God when things don't feel like they're going as planned, not as planned, but surrendering to God because He has a plan. So I want you to be encouraged by that, and for you to be able to be in the moment and find His goodness in spite of the circumstances. So, Ryan, anything else on that before I share some stories?
No, let's share some stories. So
with all of that, to kind of set this up, I want to move into part 2 of our episode here. And I thought about this along the lines of, so much of what we do turns out so different than what we hope in dreams sometimes. But at the end of the day, I really don't think that our children are going to someday, I mean, they might remember, but they are not going to remember as much about some of these details, the outfits, the parties, as we think. So I just want to help our listeners to put this in perspective. And what I did was I went on social media and I asked, what is the most important thing or lesson that your mother gave you? And Ryan, guess what?
What's that?
Not a single person listed the first day of school chalkboard photos. You guys, that's something. I was off of social media for a while and I came back on and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't do those for Ella. She's going to graduate and we don't have those first day chalkboard photos for her. You know what?
Right.
She doesn't care.
Right.
She doesn't care. So nobody listed that. Nobody said the best thing my mother gave me was a chalkboard photo. Now, I think they're so cute and endearing and I love the memories. So there's nothing wrong with it. I started doing some stuff like that. But nobody said, you know what? The best thing that my mother gave me was that My Little Pony birthday party when I turned 7. That was the best thing she gave me. Or maybe, Ryan, what kind of party did you have? G.I. Joe or something?
Oh, yeah. I had some G.I. Joe, had some wrestling ones.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
You remember it, but would you say that was the best thing?
No, I mean, and like, when I say I remember, like, vaguely.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember how old I was.
Sure.
I don't remember any of those.
And I think all those things do create like a happy childhood, right? Like the essence of it all creates a really pleasant childhood memories. But when it came down to it, the thing that people are going to remember isn't gonna be necessarily a thing. It's gonna be kind of a trait, a character trait,
Sure.
or something bigger. So do you want to hear some of them?
Let's
Okay.
hear 'em.
So again, what is the most important thing your mother taught you? So this is from Karina. She says, how to love unconditionally through words and actions and how to care for others. She also said, time heals, pain, disappointment, hurt. Her stepdaughter actually said that. Somebody else, Amber, said resiliency. Pat said she always believed in me, unconditionally loved me, and valued me with time. Amy said this, her mom was a single parent of 4 kids, and they were all really little. And she said now she just thinks how blessed she is to have a partner in this with her. But also her mom taught her gratitude for the small things, how to fight hard in what she believes in, and mostly never give up. The devil will fight you and put so many obstacles and storms in your way. But when you fight harder, there's no way he can win. She also said unconditional love and to be there for your family. Jackie said, this one's hard because she's given me so much advice in multiple areas of my life. One thing that sticks with was when I was in a past relationship, having a hard time and constantly asking for advice. At one point she said, but you need to remember, this is a relationship between you and this other person, not a relationship with me, you, and him. You guys are going to have to work through this together and come to a decision for this relationship to work long term. She said that was such great advice that she's now brought that into her marriage. That's really good.
Wow, yeah.
There are a couple of people that shared, it's hard. Somebody had said they have a memory of going to dance classes, but their mom is now in memory care. And I realize that that brings a whole nother set of toughness to go through. Another one, Maria said, that you don't have to agree with other people or be their best friend, but you can always treat them with kindness where they're at. That's really good advice that she learned from her mom. Lindsay said, this kind of goes along with some of the perseverance that we've learned. If you commit to something, finish through with it. If you want something, you have to work hard for it and to turn to God for your worries. Kara said, my mom is selfless. I'm a work in progress, but she was willing to be there no matter what the circumstances. She puts others above herself, spends every day in God's word. The best thing about my mom and my dad is seeing them studying his word every day. That's the best gift of all. Andy said, my mom taught me how to live and how to die. I think that one's really beautiful, and just that there's so much to living, that, how are you living your life? And they just go on and on. But I think what's interesting is that most people, I'll read one more here. In this one, and maybe you don't have positive memories of your mother, but AJ shared this. Addiction comes in many forms, but it's been nearly 40 years and she's still trying. Mm. And it's okay. It's okay. I mean, we're all works in progress. So I think my takeaway from these, Ryan, is that a lot of them talked about unconditional love. Oh, I have one more in my notebook here too. This is our neighbor had told us this. Laura said, my mom always listens. She answers questions and she's judgment free. She gives me time and she's a safe space. Mm. What I want our moms to realize today is that there's so much pressure that we put on ourselves for like the outfits and the hair, and that they have the cutest backpack, or, you know, they're on the A team with their sport, and that we're driving them all over town for this and that. But at the end of the day, your presence and how you're modeling your life and how you're living and giving and listening to them, that's what they're going to remember. So I want you to know that you're doing a great job, and those character skills that you pass on, that's what they're going to take with. Yeah. That's what they're going to take with to their family, to their spouse, to their kids. So first, realize that for yourself and pat yourself on the back, Mom, because you're doing a great job. But also, maybe it's just a perspective shift. Take some of that pressure off of yourself. And maybe it's just reevaluating, like, hey, you know what? I don't need to put so much pressure on myself for this area, but I am really going to make sure that I'm listening to them. I think a lot of the people I asked, they share that their moms always listen. And Ryan, I remember this advice. We took a parenting class probably 14 years ago. I don't know, or maybe not that long. I don't even know how long it was. We haven't been married that long. 10 years ago. I don't know. Ella was little. Thomas wasn't born yet. Time is a blur. But I remember in that class, probably 10 years ago, they had said, if you don't have time to listen to your kids' problem about how their Barbie broke or their Hot Wheels track broke or whatever, there won't be a time when you can just automatically switch that flip back on in middle school or high school and open up that dialogue again. It's a bridge that you really have to keep open. So if you're too busy to listen to them now, you're like showing them that like you're just too busy. Like, and I think that's something that we've always done is just try to make time to listen. Yeah. You're better than me. I can be a really busy person. But so encouraging you with that, like maybe there are things that you just need to kind of shift, and just realizing what's really important at the end of the day, that your child has a relationship with Jesus and they know that they're loved by him first and foremost, that God created them amazing, and that you love them and you're there for them.
Yeah, Michelle, it's such a great, I think so much about like, if the small things matter, or you have time for those small things, mm-hmm. you have time for the big things.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to dismiss those small things, because then they won't come with the big things.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great lesson that you just shared, that we learned. I think it's so good. Michelle, I'm going to ask you, is there something, as we're talking about moms and as we read those, is there something that jumped out to you and maybe a lesson that your mom taught you?
Yeah. My mom is one of the strongest people I know. We actually lost my dad to a massive heart attack when I was 14. My brother was 12. 2 weeks later, my mom would celebrate her 40th birthday as a widow with 2 teenagers. And I think about all that she did and gave of herself to make sure that my brother and I had our needs met, that we were loved. And even our faith, that we kept going, and she did so much to make sure that we could just carry on with our activities and staying, connected to our church home. And I think about now, fast forward, she's battling cancer. And I think that as I look at her, she's such a warrior. She's so strong. And in this time right now, her body is frail, but she has stage 4 breast cancer, but she is so strong, like up here and in here. Her head and her heart are so strong. And even to see her faith through this all, I think just her strength. She's also always there for us, even now, me as a grown adult with children, her grandchildren, tonight, so that we could record this podcast. She's taken her son to baseball. We're so lucky to have her in town, but just her presence. She's very present in our lives.
Yeah.
She's very strong, and she's very encouraging. And that's what I love about my mom. So happy Mother's Day, Mom.
That's
what
cool.
about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of, as I'm, just listening to some of those other things, I think one of the greatest things, and part of this is, I think, been passed to me, is I think she always listened. I mean, I could always talk to my mom about anything, and I think that was so amazing to have that, and I think that's a characteristic that I have now.
You're a great listener.
And I think
I'd agree.
It comes from that, So, I mean, I think as we're talking about these things that these characteristics, like I can see it play out in my own life, of just how I show up as a dad to our children. I mean, I think
you're very present.
Very present, listening, So I think that's a big characteristic.
I'm going to read this scripture. It's from Proverbs 1:8-9. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck. The things that we are teaching and instructing to our children are garlands to grace their head and chains to adorn their neck. They are blessings to them.
Yeah.
And we want you to be encouraged with that. And you know what? Today is a new day. If there are things that you want to change, then now's the time. Change them. But we want you to be encouraged that you're doing a great job, and your kids are going to remember how you made them feel, the love that you gave, the faith that you showed them. And they're going to remember those big things.
Yeah.
Ryan, final thoughts for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I think just going back to so much of life is off script. I mean, I think so much of as I look at my life and how I would have planned it out, it's been nothing like what I would have planned out.
Yeah.
But there was a bigger plan in play, and it's been so beautiful. Every weaving in and out of things, every valley, every mountaintop moment, there was a bigger plan at play.
Yeah.
And it's been beautiful.
I think it takes a really strong faith to be able to look and see that, because you've had some really low valleys.
Yeah.
But to be able to see how God is able to use some of that brokenness and just weave it together. Yeah.
His plan was so much better than mine. So, yeah, absolutely.
To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today on the Celebrate MarriageCast. We want you to know we are here for you. We would love to hear your takeaways from today's show. Leave us a comment. If you're on Spotify, you can just do that in the drop down. Leave us a comment on YouTube. Send us a message on our text line. We'll have that in our show notes. Just thank you so much for listening. If you need more help for marriage resources, visit us at celebrate.church/marriage. And we hope that you have a great week and a happy Mother's Day.